Well, the Eternals series radio and another author's Chitchat. I'm author Nathan Parks, and I am the author of the Eternal series, the Nephilim, the Rise. Actually, I guess it's the Nephilim, the Vapor, and the Rise, and in that order, as well as working on several other novels. But we take some time out sometimes. We've been adding 2 of the books on these podcasts in audio form, but then I also take some time out to just talk to you about different things going on in the author's world, in my world, as well as answer questions from fans about the series, about different books, about writing, and just keeping you, up to date and real kind of personal, kind of like, even though you can't see me, I can't see you, but the idea is just to kind of set this in a format where if you and I were just sitting down having a cup of coffee at Alfonso's Cafe, we could just be talking about the books, talking about different things, and getting kind of personal. So this question, if you're not part of our author Nathan Parks Facebook group, you should check it out, look it up, be a part of it. And this question comes from one of our readers, Daniel. I put out there that I was going to be doing this live broadcast today and asked anyone to present a question. And one of the questions that was presented was actually twofold. The first part of the question was, do you know basically the content, or let's read it actually, do you know the ending to your characters, or is their destiny fluid and dependent on the novel's ending? And then the second question was, with this in mind, how did you decide Leah's character, and how did you decide to have her suffer so much? So let me do a caveat before we go any further. This broadcast definitely is going to have spoilers. If you have not read the Nephilim, the Vapor, or the Rise, I would suggest, and you don't like spoilers, I would suggest you turn and go on to the next podcast. But if you don't mind it, or if you've read these books, then definitely continue on listening. My characters. When it comes to my characters, I've talked about, a lot of people have asked, how do you get your characters? How do you come up with your characters? And I've explained my writing style, how I kind of listen to them and let them kind of write their story. And so I really think that's the answer when it comes to, do you know the ending to your characters, or is their destiny fluid? And definitely I would say fluid. In the Nephilim, if you've read it, you are aware that one of Eve's mentor, her confidant father figure, is Alfonso. My view when I first started writing this book, that Alfonso was going to be an essential character throughout the whole series. I really did feel, he is older in the book. I believe he's in his 70s. And so I knew that there would come a day where he would pass away, obviously. He's older. I had no clue when I started the series that Alfonso would be murdered by Denora at the end of the Nephilim. No clue. In fact, that was actually a very hard scene for me to write. When I got to it, when he had been captured, he had been taken by Arioch and Denora and the clan of Drimelech, I really thought that the Alliance was going to rescue him. I thought he might get banged up. To me, he was kind of like an Alfred to Batman. He was a gentle soul. He was a mentor. He was someone that was going to be grounding for Eve. When I got to the part of the book where I started writing and realized where it was headed, I could kind of see the foreshadowing myself. And I started seeing, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And I really did, all the way up to the time that I wrote where Denora killed him. I 100% believed that Eve was going to rescue him. I 100% believed that he may be worse for wear. He may be maimed. He may have some scars. Eve may have to nurse him back to health. But I 100% believed. When Denora killed him in the book, it was a shock to me as an author. And I remember I was emotionally impacted as the author because I had grown. Again, my characters I strive to create a depth to the reader, but there's also an element of each character that is in my spirit and in my soul that I don't know if the reader understands or knows. And I had grown very close to Alfonso. He meant a lot to me. And so when I wrote that part where Denora actually killed him, it crushed me. I couldn't write for a couple more days because I was like, I don't want to write. I was mad. I was mad at Denora. I was mad that Eve wasn't able to rescue him. I could feel the pain that Eve felt. And that last part, though, that I think where Alfonso really gives up his soul, I think was really powerful for me as an author because I saw the culmination of who he was. Even though it's not really written in the book, I really felt his history. I felt he came to a point he realized, I've done my time. There's no getting out of this. The rest of the characters, the same. There's certain characters that have, I'm trying to think, like Denora. Denora was actually not supposed to be a big part of this. She was going to be kind of like a side character. And then when you get into the Vapor and then finally the Rise, and she has risen to the pinnacle of power within the House of Akate, that was really surprising. But I also don't want to go too much further into that part of it right now because I think, Daniel, I don't believe you've read the the Rise, and so I don't want to share too much more of that. I'll try to keep it balanced to where I don't share too much, but also give enough where those who have read it can get something from this. Eve was also not supposed to be big. Ironically, in the book, when I first started writing it, I really thought that, when I started writing it, the first rough draft, Leah was Eve. Leah was actually in Eve's role. But as I started writing it, Eve started telling me, my name's Eve, not Leah. And I'm like, well, who's Leah then? So I had to go back and rewrite it because I realized that I had got the character's name wrong, but I realized that there was going to be a character named Leah. When it comes to Leah and how she suffered, there was really, again, some of it's fluid. Some of it is allowing me to see, but when I began to really get into Leah, she was a picture, I believe, of really those who struggle with any type of faith or doing things on faith. And she was really a culmination also, I think, many times of myself. I grew up in a very religious home. I was told this is the way things are. You have to believe this. This is why we believe it. We believe this. And I started watching as people of faith struggled because it didn't make sense. A lot of times it didn't make any sense. And I know people are like, well, that's what faith is. Well, that's where Leah's struggle came in. I think we all have this view in life where we have this view of the world around us and we live by that rule. And then we really become confused and angry when we feel like we are doing what we're supposed to do and the world keeps crashing around us and we feel betrayed. We're getting constantly slapped around, and yet we don't know what to do differently because it's what we've always done. And I think Leah really, with her, she really believed in Joan of Arc. She really believed in her mission. She believed that she wanted to do good. Her whole desire, she constantly sees and believes that there's good. And she believes that what she's doing is good and that it will all end up working out. But it seems that every time she thinks it's going to work out, she's getting betrayed. And I think we can all relate to that in many ways of our life. And with Leah's suffering, it was one of those things where she comes to a point where she's just like, you know, I I'm tired of this. I'm tired of living by the rules and nothing works out. And it seems that those people who are not living by the rules constantly get the power, constantly get the upper hand. And I think that's why toward the end of Vapor and into the Rise, you see a change in her. You see that change where she's finally realizing, I need to figure out who I am separate from everything else. I need to decide what is right and wrong in my eyes, in my world, not because the Arch Council's told me, not because it's the will of Jah, but because it's what's right. And honestly, she is a character that I did not believe was going to be as powerful and big in the story as she was. And she really, because again, Eve was supposed to be, the character of Eve was supposed to be the main focus. But when you get through the Nephilim, you get through the Vapor, especially in the Vapor when she's struggling with Zarius, when she's struggling with trying to figure out what is right. She's trying to hold the Alliance together. And then the Arch Council takes her spot away. She starts realizing it. And then she gives it up. But even in giving it up, she does it for the sake of the Alliance. She gives herself up to be a Vapor because it's who she is. She always, no matter how hard she fights to be independent, she still sacrifices herself for the good of the people that she leads and the good of what she believes is right, even if it means sacrificing herself altogether. And I think in the end of the Rise, you see an Eve that, or a Leah that has suffered for ages. And she's done. She is no longer an angel. She's no longer an Alliance leader. But she is confident that she has made such an impact in the lives of those she's led that now she can go forward and start discovering her. Not her as what the Alliance is called, the Arch Council has made her be. Not her, the guardian of Joan of Arc and the guardian of Eve. Her as an individual. And I almost get that picture where she's looking out and she looks back and she sees the Alliance, the people that she's led, the people that she has trained, and she kind of goes, we're good. You can do the job that I trained you to. And some of that comes from my time in the military, that when the time came, I witnessed a lot of betrayal in the military. I gave a lot of myself to the military. And in the end, I felt the military and a lot of leadership, not all, a lot of leadership turned their backs. And I realized that my time was done, but I didn't want to leave it in the hands of people that I felt couldn't do the job. And I can tell you that when I left the military, I had trained enough young soldiers and airmen who are now sergeants themselves and leaders themselves that I knew that the baby, meaning the military, the baby or the thing that I held so dear was in good hands. And now it was my time to move forward and to discover who I was outside the military. And I think that is where the element of Leah really came across and was born, is from that element in my soul. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where she goes. It's going to be interesting to see where the rest of the team goes. I have a feeling, but again, who knows? Because the characters seem to do their own story. I have a feeling that we're not going to see Leah much right now. I think she's going to kind of go off, almost like Luke Skywalker in the new Star Wars movies, where he goes off and on. I think Leah's going to just go off and spend time discovering herself, and we're not going to really hear from her right away. I think we're going to start seeing more of some of the other characters, some of the people the rise of the new Alliance and who they are, as well as some backstory. Now, I will say, I think that we'll see in some backstory and history that I'm putting together. I think we definitely will see Leah, but we're going to see an older version of her before she was jaded, before she lost Joan, before she realized there were traitors and people who this whole time she had trusted. So I hope that answers your question, Daniel. And hey,